My name is Evelyn Carter, and I'm 38 years old. I used to believe stability was something you earned quietly. No applause, no drama, just consistency, a career you showed up for, bills paid on time, retirement contributions automated so you didn't have to think about them. I had been doing that since I was 23. By the time this story begins, my life looked solid from the outside. I worked in IT security, cleared just over $120,000 a year, lived comfortably but not extravagantly. I wasn't chasing luxury. I was chasing security, the kind that lets you sleep through the night without your stomach tightening every time an email notification buzzes. My 401k had been my proudest achievement, $185,000, built slowly, carefully, patiently. I never thought that money would disappear in less than a year. I met Daniel Mercer 3 years earlier at a networking event downtown. He was charismatic in a way that felt intentional. Warm smile, confident posture, the kind of man who knew how to make you feel seen without trying too hard. He worked in retail management, and he talked about fashion like it was a calling, not a job. His dream was a boutique, not just a store, a concept. Curated pieces, clean lines, a vibe built for Instagram and weekend foot traffic. He talked about fabrics the way some people talk about music. Passionate, animated, convincing. I fell for him faster than I'd planned. Daniel made life feel exciting. He was spontaneous where I was cautious, expressive where I was reserved. He told me I grounded him. I told myself that meant balance. By the time we got engaged, I believed we were building something together. The boutique had always been part of the plan. He'd been saving, but not much. His credit score hovered in the mid-600s, not disastrous, but not strong enough for a startup loan. Banks said no, over and over again. I watched the disappointment settle into him like a weight, and I loved him. So when he asked, carefully, apologetically, like he already hated himself for needing help, I told myself this was what partnership looked like. I cashed out my retirement account. The penalties were brutal. Taxes, early withdrawal fees, nearly $55,000, gone immediately. But I walked away with $130,000 in usable capital, money that had taken me 15 years to build. I told myself it was an investment. I told myself love meant risk. I told myself I was being smart about it. Because here's the thing, I wasn't reckless. My sister is an attorney. I asked her to help structure everything properly. We formed an LLC. I was listed as the 70% owner and managing member. Daniel held 30% as the operating partner. Every clause documented, every signature notarized. When I showed him the paperwork, he cried, said I was making his dreams come true. We celebrated by touring commercial spaces, found a perfect spot, 1,800 square feet in a trendy shopping district. Rent was $4,500 a month. I signed the lease on behalf of the LLC. Over the next 8 months, I watched my future turn into clothing racks, lighting fixtures, inventory orders, point-of-sale systems. Daniel handled the creative side. I handled the money. And slowly, quietly, something shifted. He stopped asking before making decisions, stopped looping me in, started using phrases like, "Don't worry about it," and "Trust me." I noticed. I ignored it. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday. I took the day off work, put on a tailored suit, showed up early to help. I thought I was walking into the proudest moment of our lives. I didn't know I was about to watch everything collapse in public. The boutique came together faster than I expected. Every week, another invoice, another delivery, another decision made before I even knew there had been a choice to make. What had once felt like collaboration slowly shifted into something that looked more like delegation. And I was always the one being delegated to, not with. Daniel stayed late at the store most nights. He came home smelling like dust and fabric softener, eyes bright with adrenaline, hands restless. When I asked how things were going, his answers grew vague. Good, busy, lots of moving parts. You wouldn't want to get into the weeds. It's creative stuff. Creative stuff. That phrase started to irritate me more than it should have. At first, I told myself it was normal. This was his dream, after all. He had the vision. I had the spreadsheets. Division of labor. Healthy partnership. But then the expenses started creeping. A lighting upgrade I hadn't approved. A marketing package that cost double what we'd discussed. Consulting fees paid out monthly to someone whose name I didn't recognize. When I asked, Daniel brushed it off easily. "She's helping with vendor relationships," he said. "Has great taste, great connections." She. I didn't like how casually he said it, like it was obvious I should already know. "What's her role exactly?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just helping. You know how this works." I did know how this worked. That was the problem. I brought it up with my sister over dinner one night, trying to keep my tone light. "Am I being paranoid?" I asked. "Or does just helping sound like the beginning of a lawsuit?" She didn't laugh. She asked me if Daniel had authority to add partners without my consent. I told her no. The operating agreement was clear. "Good," she said. "Then let's keep it that way." A week later, she emailed me a draft of dissolution papers. "Just in case," she said. "Don't panic, you don't have to use them." I stared at the attachment for a long time before saving it to a folder I labeled LLC, backup. Daniel didn't know about the papers. He didn't know I'd noticed the changes. He didn't know my trust had started to thin. The week before the grand opening, he barely slept, stayed at the boutique past midnight, came home exhausted but energized, like someone running on a secret. I told myself I was proud of him. But at night, lying awake beside him, I had this persistent, gnawing feeling that something important was happening without me, something I was paying for. The morning of the opening, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my jacket, trying to steady my nerves. This was supposed to be our moment, proof that love and planning could coexist. I arrived early, coffee in hand, ready to help with final prep. That's when I saw her. Young, confident, dressed like she belonged there. She was rearranging merchandise behind the counter, my counter, with the ease of someone who felt entitled to the space. Daniel noticed me watching. His smile flickered, just for a second. Then he walked over, wrapped an arm around my waist, and said, "Evelyn, I want you to meet someone." I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment my gut finally stopped whispering. It started screaming. "Evelyn, this is Lena," Daniel said, his hand still resting on my lower back. "She's been helping me a lot behind the scenes." Lena smiled like we were already friends. Not polite, familiar. "Finally," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard so much about you." That was my first real mistake of the day, assuming I was imagining the emphasis on finally. I shook her hand. "Nice to meet you." She turned back to the clothing rack immediately, adjusting a blazer I knew cost more than the one I was wearing. The confidence with which she moved through the space made my chest tighten. Before I could ask anything else, Daniel clapped his hands. "Okay, we're almost ready. This is happening." People started arriving within minutes. Champagne bottles popped. Music hummed softly through the speakers. Influencers posed in front of the mirror wall. Friends hugged Daniel, congratulating him, telling him how proud they were. No one congratulated me. I stood near the back, smiling when spoken to, watching Daniel and Lena work the room together. They moved like a practiced pair, finished each other's sentences, leaned in close when they laughed. She touched his arm when she spoke. Small gestures, easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. I was looking. Then I saw it. I was near the register, pretending to check something on my phone, when Daniel leaned toward her. She tilted her head up. Their mouths met. Not a greeting, not a joke. A kiss. Real, lingering, familiar. And she kissed him back. Something in me went very quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't confront them in that moment. I simply stepped outside, took a breath, and texted my sister. "I need the papers. Now." She replied almost immediately. "On my way." 20 minutes later, Daniel tapped a glass for attention. Lena stood beside him, one hand resting casually at his back. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "This has been a long journey, a dream come true, and I couldn't have done it without the amazing people standing next to me." He looked at Lena when he said it. "She's not just a helper," he continued, smiling. "She's my co-founder." The word hit me like ice water. When the applause died down, I stepped forward. "Can I say something?" I asked. Daniel hesitated but nodded. I turned to the room. "This business was funded entirely with my retirement savings," I said calmly. "The LLC documents show I own 70% as managing member. Daniel owns 30% as operating partner." The room went silent. "And I just watched him kiss his co-founder," I added. Daniel's face drained of color. Lena's smile vanished. "As managing member," I continued, "I'm exercising my right to dissolve the LLC effective immediately." I handed Daniel the papers. "You'll receive your 30% share of remaining assets after debts are settled. The lease will be terminated. You have 30 days to remove personal items." Someone gasped. Daniel stammered, "You can't, this is my dream." "It was your dream," I said evenly, "funded by my money while you were cheating on me." I turned to the crowd. "Sorry everyone, boutique's canceled. Please enjoy the champagne." Then I walked out. My phone started vibrating before I reached the parking lot. I didn't look at it. I drove straight to my sister's office, hands steady on the wheel in a way that felt almost surreal, like my body had switched into emergency protocol and shut everything else down. She already had the conference room ready when I arrived, files spread across the table, laptop open, highlighter uncapped. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." We spent the next 3 hours doing what heartbreak had taught me to do very well. Document everything. Every wire transfer, every invoice, every lease clause, every signature. By the time I left her office, the sun had set and something else had hardened inside me. That night, Daniel came home, or at least he tried to. I'd already packed his things. Clothes, shoes, the watch I'd given him for his birthday. I changed the locks on my condo, the condo I'd bought years before we met, solely in my name. When he realized he couldn't get in, he lost it. Pounded on the door, yelled my name, accused me of ruining his life. I spoke through the door. "I checked the LLC agreement," I said calmly. "I can dissolve it with majority ownership. I have 70%. You have 30. That's not emotional. That's math." "This is illegal," he shouted. "I'll sue you." "Feel free," I replied. "My attorney has been involved since day one." He left eventually. 2 days of silence followed. Then the letters started. The first came from an attorney whose website featured stock photos and promised aggressive representation. The demands were ambitious. Full ownership of the boutique transferred to Daniel, $200,000 for emotional distress, $50,000 for lost future income, a public apology. My sister laughed out loud. We responded with a polite refusal and attached the LLC documents, proof of my investment, and a brief note mentioning the affair. A week later, his attorney came back with a revised offer. Daniel wanted $75,000 to walk away quietly. That's when we decided to dig deeper. And we found everything. Consulting fees paid monthly to Lena, $3,000 each. 4 months. Merchandise purchased from a vendor owned by her family, $8,000, when comparable inventory would have cost $5,000. Last-minute fixture upgrades, $6,000 extra, recommended by Lena. Total amount siphoned through the woman he was sleeping with, $26,000. We sent the findings to his attorney with a single sentence. "Your client may want to reconsider, as we're evaluating criminal charges for embezzlement." His attorney dropped him within 24 hours. Daniel, however, was just getting started. Once the lawyer dropped him, Daniel stopped pretending this was about legality and leaned fully into desperation. He showed up at my office building 3 days later. Security called me first. "There's a man in the lobby demanding to see you," the guard said. "He's emotional." I didn't go down. I told them I only communicated through attorneys now. If he refused to leave, they could call the police. He left, after yelling loud enough that half my floor heard his version of the story, that I was stealing his business, that I was destroying his future. It would have been embarrassing if it wasn't so transparently untrue. The boutique itself was next. The LLC owned approximately $65,000 worth of inventory. Clothing, shoes, accessories, all bought with my money. According to the operating agreement, assets were to be liquidated and distributed according to ownership percentage. 70% to me, 30% to him. I hired a professional liquidation company. They were blunt. "We can probably move it for around 45 grand, the manager said. "Retail markup doesn't survive resale." My stomach dropped anyway. After fees and expenses, my share would be around $31,500. Daniel's, $13,500. When he found out, he lost his mind. He called from a friend's phone after I blocked his number. "You're selling my merchandise?" he screamed. "That's theft." "It's LLC property," I said, "and liquidation starts Monday." That weekend, he tried to break into the boutique. Security cameras caught him at the back door, fumbling with the lock. The landlord's security company called the police. He was cited for attempted breaking and entering. He blamed me for that too. The landlord situation closed the door completely. I'd paid 3 months of rent up front, $13,500. The lease allowed early termination with 60 days notice and forfeiture of 1 month's rent. I gave notice, lost $4,500. Done. Daniel tried to take over the lease himself. The landlord called me to ask if the LLC would remain responsible. "If Daniel qualifies on his own," I said. "That's between you and him." He didn't qualify. No credit, no business history, no income. The landlord said no. Then things got messier. Daniel and Lena tried to restart the boutique independently. Smaller space, month-to-month rent, same vendors, same branding, just tweaked enough to claim it was new. They didn't last 5 weeks. They defaulted on vendor payments, about $35,000 total. Collections agencies moved in fast. One vendor filed suit almost immediately. Daniel called me again. "This is your fault," he said. "You ruined my reputation." "No," I replied. "You did that." He hung up. The liquidation company began selling inventory that Monday. Watching the numbers roll in felt like witnessing a slow, controlled fire. Necessary, contained, still devastating. I'd invested $165,000 total. I'd recover roughly $37,000. The rest was gone. But at least I'd stopped the bleeding. Losing money hurt. But what Daniel did next was worse. He went after my reputation. Almost overnight, I became the villain in his version of the story. According to him, I was financially abusive, controlling, vindictive. A woman who dangled money over his head and yanked it away the moment he didn't behave the way I wanted. Friends started calling, texting carefully, asking questions that weren't really questions. "Why are you being so hard on him? Couldn't you have worked something out privately? He says you blindsided him." I sent 3 people the LLC agreement, the transaction history, the proof of the affair, the consulting payments to Lena. They stopped calling. Daniel's mother showed up at my condo one night at 10 p.m. "You need to give him another chance," she said through the door. "He made a mistake." "He made a series of calculated decisions," I replied, including stealing from the business. "He's struggling. He's 35. She called me heartless and left. A week later, I canceled the wedding. Every deposit had been paid with my card. Venue, catering, photographer, DJ, tent $800 total. After cancellation fees, I lost $5,000. Daniel's response? He asked if I'd let him keep the date and vendors. "So you can marry Lena?" I asked. "Yes," he said, like that was a reasonable request. That was the moment I stopped feeling anything at all. Then came the screenshots. A woman I'd always liked, someone who'd been in Daniel's circle, asked me to meet for coffee. She slid her phone across the table. Text messages from Daniel, months old. "She's so easy with money. Once the business takes off, I'm done. She's too in love to demand a prenup." I thanked her, saved everything. Before the LLC officially closed, I did one last thing. I logged into the boutique's social media accounts, the ones I'd created and paid for. I posted a single message. "After careful consideration, this business is permanently closed. Followers should be cautious of anyone claiming to reopen under similar branding. Misappropriation of funds was discovered during final accounting." Then I deleted the accounts. Petty? Yes. Legal? Completely. 4 months after the grand opening that never really opened, the legal dust finally settled. Daniel didn't show up to 2 of the 3 vendor hearings. Default judgments were entered against him. $35,000 total. Wage garnishment would begin as soon as he found steady work. His last attorney tried one final maneuver, claiming the LLC dissolution had been procedurally improper. My sister responded with 60 pages of documentation. The judge denied the motion in under 15 minutes. That was the end of it. The fallout, however, kept spreading. Lena vanished when the money ran out. Blocked Daniel everywhere. Disappeared. It later came out, through the kind of small business gossip that travels faster than email, that she'd been running the same scheme with multiple men, positioning herself as a consultant, sleeping with them, collecting fees. One woman pressed fraud charges, an investigation opened. Daniel was furious, not at her, but at me. The final accounting was brutal. Total invested, $165,000. Total recovered, $37,400. Net loss, $127,600. My financial advisor ran the projections. If I'd left the money in my 401k, it would have grown to roughly $720,000 by retirement. That number hurt more than everything else combined. But here's the truth I don't say out loud very often. If I'd married him, the damage would have been far worse. Joint accounts, divorce, years lost before the mask slipped, maybe a pregnancy to lock me in. The boutique was just the opening act. Now, I'm rebuilding. My 401k has $800 in it. I max out my employer match. I took on a side consulting gig, an extra $1,500 a month. I drive a used car I paid for in cash. No debt, no illusions. Dating is cautious, honest. Some people don't like hearing that I got burned badly. Others appreciate the transparency. My circle is smaller now, better. Daniel is back in retail, living with his mother. His credit is wrecked. His reputation in the local business community is gone. He still calls himself an entrepreneur online. The delusion persists. What did I learn? Love without boundaries is expensive. Trust without verification is dangerous. And protecting yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you smart. I didn't win, but I survived. And that counts for more than I used to believe.